Early spring is a wonderful time of year. With the hours of daylight increasing, the temps starting to warm up, and the woods springing to life with the blooms of native ephemeral spring wildflowers. Among these early spring flowers are the eye-catching blue trumpet-shaped blooms of the Virginia bluebell, Mertensia virginica, a native herbaceous perennial that is found mainly from the southern edge of the Great Lakes region south into northern Alabama and surrounding states. The Virginia bluebell is a species that can be found growing in partial to deep shade within the eastern forest and woodlands, including those of bottomlands that frequently flood, and prefers moist, rich soil with high organic matter, but they can grow well within a wide range of soil pH. They are a clumping, colony-forming species, so when you find one Virginia bluebell, you will likely find a lot of Virginia bluebells. Bluebells are often found growing with other woodland spring ephemeral wildflowers. In the patch I was filming in for this video, the bluebells had several awesome species growing with them, including Twinleaf, Jeffersonia diphylla, Virginia Springbeauty, Claytonia virginica, rue anemone, Thaltrictum thaltrictoides, trout lilies, Erythronium species, and waterleaf, Hydrophyllum species, which weren't blooming yet unfortunately, and cut-leaved toothwort, Cardamine concatenata. There were also alarming amounts of the invasive species garlic mustard, Olearia petiolata, and ground ivy, Glaucoma hederaceae, growing throughout this patch of native wildflowers. I'm going to dive into how invasive species have impacted Virginia bluebell populations in a minute, after we learn a bit more about this incredible native plant. If you love learning about native plants like the Virginia bluebell and other spring ephemeral wildflowers, be sure to pollinate that like button. Bluebells emerge from the ground early in the season, once the chance of hard frost is past. The newly emerged leaves often have a dark purplish cast to them, but they quickly take on a blue-green to grayish-green color and grow to their mature size of 3 to 6 inches long by 1 to 3 inches wide with an oval shape. The basal leaves, those at the base of the plant near the ground, can be larger, up to 8 inches long and 5 inches wide. Both surfaces of the leaf are smooth and the margin, or leaf edge, is entire, meaning not toothed. The leaf veins are quite prominent and very noticeable. Leaf arrangement on the stem is alternate. Once fully grown, the plants will be from 1.5 to 2 feet tall with a 1 to 1.5 foot spread. Virginia bluebell usually grows as a single stem, but plants may have stems that branch a time or two. Bluebells are not usually browsed upon by deer or rabbits. Not long after the plants emerge and start to get some height to them, flower buds begin to form on the ends of the stems, wrapped in the unfurling leaves. These flower buds will end up at the end of the stem in a cluster called a cyme that droops downward. The unopened buds are pinkish and wrinkled, resembling deflated pink balloons. The flower buds open from March to May, depending on location, into striking blue to sky blue, often pale pink, and sometimes even white, sweet-smelling, trumpet-shaped blooms that are from 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch long. The drooping cymes full of flowers tend to bounce and sway easily in the breeze and can be quite hypnotic as you sit there and watch them. The bloom period lasts for around 3 weeks once the buds start to open. The beautiful flowers aren't just popular with native plant enthusiasts and nature photographers. They draw an amazing assortment of native pollinators. Everything from bumblebees and other long-tongued native bees, butterflies and moths, tons of bee flies, and even hummingbirds are drawn to the colorful, fragrant blooms. The patch of bluebells I was filming for this video was buzzing with various pollinators, especially bee flies, on the day I was there. The flowers are soon followed by distinctive 4-lobed fruits, known to botanists as schizocarps, that contain a small nutlet in each lobe, which starts out green and ripen by midsummer to dark brown. The ripe nutlets are somewhat teardrop-shaped, flat on one side, and slightly wrinkled. Bluebells self-seed readily, and it is one of the ways bluebell colonies increase in size. The other is by slowly spreading from rhizomes to form a small clump. After setting seed, Virginia bluebells go dormant and all traces of them are gone by midsummer, which is something to keep in mind when using them in a native plant garden. I get asked all the time about which book I use to identify native wildflowers. Unfortunately, there isn't a simple answer to that question because I prefer to use a regional guide when identifying native forbs and wildflowers. For example, if I'm here in Kentucky, I'll grab Plant Life of Kentucky. If I'm a little farther south, I'll grab Wildflowers of Georgia and Surrounding States or Wildflowers of the Atlantic Southeast. Where I'm at determines what plant guide I reach for. We have several of the plant guides that we use listed on the Backyard Ecology recommendations page, which I will put a link to in the description. Virginia bluebells are one of the easier woodland spring ephemeral wildflowers to grow. If the requirements of some shade and soil moisture are met, they tend to grow very well. We have Virginia bluebells along with dwarf-crested iris and common blue violets growing in an old wash tub turned into a planter, and they have been doing well for several years. Virginia bluebells do take a little bit of time to establish, however, and it may take a few years for them to bloom, depending on if you start with seeds or rhizomes, which are the two most common ways of propagating Virginia bluebells. Rhizomes are more expensive, but will produce blooms quicker and give you the option of planting in the spring or fall. Although fall is the better time to plant them as it gives the roots time to establish before spring green up. Seeds require a moist cold stratification period, so they need to be winter sown or stratified in the fridge. Plants grown from seed may take up to 6 years to produce their first blooms, although they usually produce faster, somewhere around 2 to 3 years. Some nurseries may offer started plants, which is a good option for spring planting, but will likely cost more per plant than starting with rhizomes or seed. Once a colony is well established, Virginia bluebells can be divided in the late summer or fall, once fully dormant, or in the early summer as the plants start to wither and turn yellow. If you wait until fall, be sure to mark the locations of the plants you want to divide, as there won't be anything above ground to guide you. Because Virginia bluebells go dormant in midsummer, it is best to plant them with other perennials that will emerge a bit later and stay green through the summer and fall. An example of a good companion plant for Virginia bluebells, and one that often grows with it in the wild, is Canadian wild ginger, Asarum canadense, which will stay green from early spring until the fall when it goes dormant. Unfortunately, populations of Virginia bluebell have been greatly reduced in the wild in portions of its native range. Habitat loss from both residential and commercial development has had an impact. No surprise there. But there is another threat to Virginia bluebells that is having a huge impact on them, even in places where the habitat is protected from development. That threat is an invasive spring ephemeral, Lesser Celandine, Ficaria verna, which was previously known as Ranunculus ficaria, a plant that is native to Europe, Asia, and North Africa and is now widespread in the United States. Lesser Celandine thrives in the same conditions Virginia bluebells and many of our other native woodland ephemeral plants do, and it has no natural controls here in North America to rein it in. Lesser Celandine can form dense, almost turf-like colonies that can cover acres of ground very quickly. Where there were once lush patches of bluebells and other native woodland ephemeral wildflowers each spring, in many places there is now just a monoculture carpet of yellow-flowered Lesser Celandine. A perfect example of how invasive plant species can wreck native plant communities and lower biodiversity. I want to take a moment and mention that there are 2 other Mertensia species in eastern North America, although they have much smaller ranges than the Virginia bluebell. There is the tall bluebell, Mertensia paniculata, which is found in far northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan, and the corner of southeast Minnesota and northeast Iowa, and the wonderfully named oyster plant, Mertensia maritima, which is found in the extreme northeast. There are also around 17 species of Mertensia found throughout western North America. To confuse things a bit more, there are plants called bluebells from Europe that are in a completely different genus, Hyacinthoides. So, if you live where Virginia bluebells are native and are wanting to plant them in your pollinator garden, be sure that what you are buying are in fact Virginia bluebells, Mertensia virginica. The Virginia bluebell is one of the best known and loved native spring ephemeral wildflowers, and one of the easiest to grow in the home pollinator garden. Its spectacular spring show of bobbing blue blooms and the pollinator numbers they draw make them a great choice for a moist shaded garden. Just be sure to plant a species that will remain green after the bluebells go dormant in midsummer. I mentioned wild ginger as a good option, and you can learn all about it in this video, and be sure to take some time and enjoy nature in your backyard.